Has Alex Pereira already had a more impressive career than Khabib? Today, we're going to take a look at both of their resumes and decide if Alex Pereira is higher on the GOAT list than Khabib. I'm Wyatt, and this is Fight Society. There's been posts going around on Instagram that I've seen asking if Alex Pereira is already higher on the GOAT list than Khabib. And today we're going to take a look at both of their UFC resumes, pre-UFC resumes, and their amateur records, just to see what we think. Who is higher? I'll let you guys decide. Who is higher on the GOAT list? Khabib or Alex Pereira? First, we'll start with Alex Pereira. He has less than half the pro MMA bouts that Khabib did, but very impressive. He came into the UFC at 3-1 as an MMA fighter, and since then, he has beat Andreas Michelitis, who is okay, but dominant fashion on a big card. Bruno Silva, who just got blinded by Chris Weidman. And then since that fight, his last 6 fights, he has gone 5-1 and beaten 5 former UFC champions: Sean Strickland by KO, Israel Adesanya by TKO, lost to Izzy by KO in the second round, but then decision win over Jan Blachowicz, TKO against Yuri Prohaska, and most recently at UFC 300, KO in 3 minutes against Jamal Hill. Now, this is an extremely impressive resume. It's not as long, but they do say quality over quantity. And goddamn, Alex Pereira's UFC wins are quality. Now, you compare that to Khabib's 29-0 record, 0 losses, which is something to look at as well. And when we look at his UFC run, he fought Kamal Shaloris, an absolute nobody. Gleison Tibau, not a bad win. Thiago Tavares, also not a bad win, but these are very middle-of-the-pack guys. And then you have him, Abel Trujillo, decision, Pat Healy, decision. Both of these very run-of-the-mill, middle-of-the-pack lightweights. He beat Rafael dos Anjos before he was champion, but that win ended up aging very well. Daryl Horcher, very middle-of-the-pack, not very good. Average UFC run. Michael Johnson, he's been around for a long time, but he is like 22-20. So even though he's been around, he's beaten people like Dustin Poirier. Still very average, very, very average, middle-of-the-pack UFC fighter, even though he's a vet. Absolutely dominated Edson Barbosa, who is now a featherweight, and Khabib cut a lot of weight to make 155. Arguably in illegal ways, he cut weight, but I might do a deep dive on that some other time. Al Iaquinta for the belt to become champ. You know, Al Iaquinta, very long time ranked lightweight, but still not a former champ. Got this fight because Max Holloway couldn't fight. And then he has 1 former champion and 2 interim champions, where he finished all of them by submission. Conor McGregor neck crank, biggest fight in UFC history. And then submitted Dustin Poirier by rear naked choke after almost getting submitted by Dustin's guillotine. And then choked Justin Gaethje to sleep and then retired. So that is up to you guys in terms of UFC credentials and UFC record. Now, he did have 13 UFC wins to Alex Pereira's 7 right now. And Alex Pereira's 7 wins has been in, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wins in 2.5 years versus Khabib having 13 in 8.5 years. If Alex Pereira fights out his 8-fight contract that he signed with the UFC before UFC 300, he'll have a much more impressive career for sure. He has 7 wins in 2.5 years. Khabib had 13 wins in 8.5 years. Missing weight, getting injured, ducking Tony, I could say. But if you include interim champs, Khabib has 3 wins against former champs, none of them before he was actually a champ. And then if you look at Alex Pereira, he has beaten 5 former champions in 7 fights versus Khabib's 3 in 13 fights. And also, if you don't want to include interim champs, One, with that being Conor McGregor, 1 in 13 fights. People have said that Khabib's the greatest of all time. I think this is absolute BS, not even close to being the best UFC fighter of all time. His record is very, very padded, and I'll show you that in his pre-UFC opponents. So from a UFC standpoint, I would actually say that Alex Pereira may not have the most wins compared to Khabib right now, but definitely has beaten more champions already, and he has more time to rack up more wins. So even though I think that Alex Pereira's record is more impressive in the UFC right now already than Khabib's, that by the time Alex Pereira retires, he will definitely have a more impressive career than Khabib and be higher on the UFC GOAT list. It's hard to compare their pre-UFC careers, but we're going to anyway. We have Alex Pereira's career as a glory kickboxer, where he went 33-7 with 21 knockouts and also double champion at middleweight and light heavyweight, 33-7, 40 fights. And Khabib, I apologize for this being a little bit blurry, but Khabib, his first fight, 0-0 guy who ended up being 2-5 in his career. Second fight against an 0-4 fighter that finished at 6-7. Third fight, these early fights, you can't blame them too much because when you're in your first 5 fights, you're still getting in the hang of things. They're trying to get you wins, but when we get down to 12-3, that's not bad. Ali Baghav, not bad, 22-10 with his career. But if you look at the rest of them, when Khabib was 8-0, he fought a 4-3 fighter who finished his career at 8-11. When he was 9-0, he fought a guy that was 4-1. When he was 10-0, he fought a guy that was 12-9, who didn't have a win after that fight. He finished at 12-12. And then at 11-0, he beat Ashat Shahinian, who was 0-2. Going into this fight, you had an 11-0 fighter fighting an 0-2 fighter that finished their career at 1-5. You can't tell me that Khabib's record's not padded. You can't. And then at 12-0, he fought a 1-1 fighter that finished his career 3-6. And then at 13-0, he fought a 4-3 fighter. 4-3 at 13-0. What are we talking about here? Khabib fans, what are we talking about? And then at 15-0, he fought a 0-0 fighter. 0-0. 15-0 versus 0-0. Make it make sense to me. You can't tell me Khabib's record's not fucking padded. And then he fights Ari Marcel Santos, middle of the pack, bum squad, 27-22. And his very experienced though, but he was 37-34. It actually, I looked it up. I think he's 46-42 now. He has 88 career fights and he's lost 42 times. And then so basically Khabib, if we look at Khabib's Sherdog, so you look at all those BS except for this is not bad, 12-3, that aged well, 22-10 aged well, and then a guy with 88 fights, not bad. But if we go and then we look at his pre-UFC, or his UFC run, Kamal Shaloris, bum, Gleason Tebow, okay, that's fine. Four arguably good wins. Thiago Tavares, okay, cool, fine. Abel Trujillo, not bad, 6. Pat Healy, not bad, 7. RDA, not bad, 8. Daryl Horcher, bum. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So out of 29 fights, if my math is correct, 29-0, Khabib has about 12 fights that weren't layups. And a few of them shouldn't even have happened. So out of 29 fights, he had 12. And most of them of these in the UFC, he was expected to win. You could even dumb it down to really hard elite fights. RDA, Michael Johnson, Edson Barbosa. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of 29 fights against actual world-class fighters. And then if you look at Alex Pereira not only has beat world-class kickboxers, I know it's a different sport, but not only has he beaten world-class kickboxers, he has more wins against reputable opponents that are all former champions in his last 6 fights since July of 22. In the last 1.5 years, Alex Pereira is higher than Khabib on the GOAT list. That's all I'm saying. Now, there's a couple other things that we can look at. Khabib had 1 defeat as an amateur in Sambo, and he is he's rumored to have had 250 amateur fights. Sambo matches, whatever you want to call it. But those are fights. Sambo is actually legit fighting. It's not like jiu-jitsu matches, which are not a fight. So arguably 250 something and 1. And then you have Alex Pereira was 25-3 as an amateur kickboxer. So 25-3 as a kickboxer, 250-1. I know this is getting you ready for your pro career, but my final take, Alex Pereira is already much higher on the GOAT list than Khabib. Khabib fans, let me hear your reasoning in the comments. Let me hear your copes down below, all right? Alex Pereira is higher than Khabib on the GOAT list, and he'll continue to widen that gap the longer that he fights. If he completes his 8-fight contract with mostly wins, not even close. That's what I got for you guys. Alex Pereira, GOATed. Khabib, padded record. Let me hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Khabib fans, start coping in the comments. If you like this video and you want more content just like this, click that subscribe button down below. If you want more content from me, go check out my weekly comedy podcast, the Hissyfit podcast, and go check out my personal channel, Wyatt's World. Go watch this suggested video, and I'll see you next time.